My name is Derek Tangretti, and I am happy and honored to present for you guys today and present with you. So if you want to reach out to me if anything I say is too fast or I skip over something, which inevitably I will. Please feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter handle, it's at dtangred. In terms of education, currently my role is a STEM university instructor at the University of Western Ontario, and I also teach grades 7 to 8 in Thames Valley District School Board, and my role next year will be a math TOSA on special assignment within that board. So I'm just going to be talking today about constructing learning and really what e-learning redefined could be and what that could look like as we move forward in transition in such this truculent time. So I mentioned that this is where I teach at Wilford Jury, grades 7 and 8, and at Western. And really within both of these, as I've been doing it, I've really had to evolve and change the way that I was doing things originally. A lot of things had changed, and when I started and went into e-learning, this is kind of how my class acted and looked, because I was trying to do things the way that I was doing it in a face-to-face scenario within the classroom, and that didn't mimic itself well into the digital age, into the digital landscape. So really I was using this consumption model where everything was teacher derived and the students were all working in their similar silos doing similar things. And that was kind of a failure, which is definitely on me. Now, how can we improve upon this is really shifting away from these consumption models and moving into more creating. And when I think of that, the scenario that I was doing is really logging into Netflix and finding one movie to watch and one show. And if you ask yourself that and think about that, what do you want to watch? No. And I feel that when I talk to other teachers and boards and all over the country, they're finding similar experiences, that students are reluctant and they're not engaged. So how can we redefine what that looks like and motivate them? So one of the things I'm trying to push within, I guess, my school, my board, is to shift to a more construction-based model and a competency-based program. So one such one has actually been used by Queen's University of Medicine, which is really more based on constructionism and play-based learning, where it's really learner-centered, individualized, and there's more autonomy within the program, and it's shifting away from that traditional classroom landscape that we all know. Now, this is what's interesting. Douglas Rushkoff, in his book Program or Be Programmed, talks about similar things in this regard of in comparison to YouTube, where students this day and age are really great at watching YouTube videos. They are less great at creating content to put on YouTube and extending far beyond that, what that has to offer. And this is going to be a real dilemma as we move forward if this isn't rectified soon. So how do we improve this? We shift away from consumption modeling to adaptive models, which is more about construction of knowledge and the inquiry-based learning process, and really about transferring more agency to the learner. And although I have varied ongoing assessment here, I would also say that that embodies self-assessment as well, which is a pivotal part. And we really have to consider those conferences, observations, and conversations, and that triangulation of assessment piece. So John Dewey really lumps this in with, and I think it's never been more clear and evident, give people something to do, not something to learn. And I couldn't love that quote more of what it resonates with today. And just in terms of Mitch Resnick's work in lifelong kindergarten, putting the focus on creativity and moving away from just grades, and even within with using all our online platforms, you're posting things to OneNote and you're creating sways, having students engage in the learning process, which is active and kinesthetic, is kind of where I really want to shift and move practice towards. So, and I mentioned this earlier, just rooted in constructionism, which is this cyclical thinking constructs that are ongoing and evolving, where we're really contextualizing the learning process rather than simply checking boxes. So I do have some research here about the availability of tools and manipulatives. And in the virtual world, it's a lot harder to use the same pedagogical tools and things that we were using in the classroom. But I'm going to show today in my session some of the ways in which that this can be achieved. So how do we find our purpose, and how do we find that for students? One quick way is through choice boards. Now, I've been working, this is actually not my choice board. I've collaborated on it, but there was several people at work within TVDSB. But these are simple to make, and I've been seeing a ton shared online, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But one of the things that I noticed with choice boards is I was getting inundated with just random files all over the place. So in terms of workflow, it was one of the least efficient models that I had seen. So I'm trying to think, how could we do this better and make it more effective for teachers, where everything is in the same place, organized, easy to assess, easy to submit back to students, leave common descriptive feedback for them. How can we achieve that? Well, the choice is really through interactive choice boards. And here's an example of a basic one. And the reason that it's not more elaborative in terms of aesthetic details is because it doesn't need to be. Yes, I do have some other ones that look a little more aesthetically pleasing, but these are simple to create, but effective in terms of a pedagogical tool. So I placed the steps of how you would do this on the side, but really all this one's actually just like a 2x3 table, but it's really a 3x3. I just shrunk it and blew it up just to make it easy for a visual. But what I like to do with my choice boards is I like to have all their options. So different tools that you could use. So Microsoft MakeCode, Flipgrid, Scratch, Minecraft. And I noticed a couple of things. I always include a video tutorial, but not only do I include a video tutorial, but I include one that I myself have created, because students seem to resonate with that a lot more. I also put the hyperlink to the website and the tutorials so they can just click on it and learn about it if they're not certain on a given thing. Now, the big differentiator here is creating what goes in the middle is like your workflow. So you have them all submit their projects to one space. So if you actually click here, and I'll show you how to do this in a tutorial video that's an additional resource, you can create a OneDrive shareable folder where students are just dropping everything into that one folder. So instead of it just being shared amongst like all over your drives or in one given place, you will have only everything in one given folder. You can also do this with a Sway, and there's a couple of other ways that you can do it, but I'm going to focus on this way for the sake of today's presentation. So I will have an additional video tutorial that you'll be able to reference if you need it, and it'll just kind of walk you through the steps of how to achieve this end and make it easier. Now, choice boards are great, and here's another example of another. Now, what I really like about this one is it has the same things, but this is what is a differentiator and a game changer in my classroom. Really shifting from compliance to play, and how do we foster play? How do we really focus on creativity and those inquiry goals and like sustainable development goals and other things that extend beyond direct instruction sometimes? Well, the greatest thing that I've done lately since like e-learning, and prior to that even a little, is using a surprise me box within the choice boards. And I am not kidding, some of the best projects that I've ever had came from using this option. And I'm just going to show a few of them today. So one of the projects that literally to this day has blown my mind and been one of the craziest things that I've ever seen is a girl who was a dancer came up to me who's a little reluctant in terms of using like math and said, "Mr. T, you got to do this. You got to let me prove Pythagorean theorem using dance. That's what I want to use as my mystery box." And sure enough, I'm like, okay, sure, let's see how this goes. And this girl's a professional dancer. She had a friend using stop motion and recording her angular measurements to prove this, along with other like angular measurements. It to this day is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. I didn't directly teach it. I only basically said yes. And like just seeing that reaction, what happened afterward was her being empowered to explore other areas of math and extend beyond what I even thought she was capable of doing. And she really reframed her own ontology and belief of what she could achieve, which was amazing. Here's just a couple other examples of using like tactile learning tools. And like we had someone make a gumball machine proving the Pythagorean theorem, different artworks, a couple of other like replicas. We even had one student try to make a mini rocket launcher. Some people use like sports and kinesthetic activities through like volleyball to prove it. This is one example of like what can happen, but honestly, it's really bound by nothing, and students have thrived with this, and I couldn't recommend it higher. So how do we then take some of the learning experiences that we have in the classroom and make them interactive? One of the things I noticed about teaching that I was doing was I was like teaching the same way and using like different PowerPoint slides and posting it into a OneNote, but it was really like a digitized worksheet. And I wanted to make it, while I was doing this live, like on a Teams call, I wanted to be able to have students interacting with me. Now, one of the things I'm not using today, and which usually takes a lot more time, is I'd be embedding these into Nearpod and adding a lot of extensions within like my PowerPoint slides. So I'd have a lot of more collaboration. And ideally, I would even do that with this presentation with you, but because it's videoed, taped, we won't have that luxury. But normally I'd be having the embedded Padlets and things like that that could go along with it. So why should we make like these interactive presentations? Well, students are becoming bored. I'm sure some of you have had some of this experience. You can send hyperlinks to like families, but each one is different, and like you're not always familiar with all the tools that you're using, and you have to learn something new like each day or each week. I really wanted to focus on making learning consistent and have a standard approach to ensure that the affordances of learning are there, and really make the students part of the lesson is really what I was trying to do. So make it more of a learning experience. So let me show you a couple of examples of what I mean. So this is a PWIM. So this is like a picture induction model. And what I had students do here, and I might have to go off of like full screen in a second, but we were doing a shared reading, and they would take whatever like the image is here, and they would actually write all the words that come to their mind pertaining to this photo. Now, why that's important, like for me at my school, I have a very severe ELL contingency. So we're trying to pull out root words and really expand on our proficiency in terms of literacy, but that's no easy task. So for them to actually select words from here, from this picture, actually elicits a lot of good conversation, and I've really seen a lot of growth. Now, normally in a lesson, if I'm showing this, what actually happens is the students could be viewing this like with me, and they can actually simply select and type into the text box on one of these if they wanted. So they can select one of these slides and type in whatever response that they think that they see. So they see something, they can type it into the text box. What they then do from there is they actually classify each of these into a different section. So for right now, I don't think, for some reason, I think it froze, but even I'll just show you how easy it is. So let's just say this is my background, and I'll explain why later. So if I have a background, all I would have to do to make this viable, and I think mine like edited itself for a minute, but let's just say I put in a text box here, like in the nouns, and I would just keep repeating this process, in there. And then students would take the word that they actually found in the previous item, and now they could actually type within the text box. So they can actually select what they want to type in, and they can repeat this process into the verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So they're really categorizing them and understanding a better fluency in terms of the writing. Now, there's a long process that actually goes into this. It's not just within this slide, and the length of this video won't allow me to cover all of that. But what eventually happens in terms of the end goal is once they start doing their word sort, they classify their words, they're actually going to derive a beginning paragraph from it, depending on whatever your study, whether that be narratives or it could be basically anything, like any type of writing that you really want to do. And this is all based on a picture prompt. And like now you see that they actually have some greater sentence fluency, and it's really an interactive slide that they were part of the process. So while I'm talking, they can actually be jotting down their notes and interacting, as opposed to me just like kind of like how I have to talk to you now in video. You actually would have a chance to be working alongside. So here's another example, and I'll show what I mean. So this is an interactive math slide, and I use these a lot, and students love them. They cannot get enough of them. So in this case, I'm asking, can you use the cards and place them to the table to represent the graph on the left-hand side? So here I have this graph, and we have our X and Y values, and I give you the term like number, and I want you to fill in the value. So you see when you go to term 1, you have a value of 2. So you would take your slide and you would drag the 2 over. And so students would then do this, and you get to see their thinking, and they actually get to like see immediately, get immediate results. Am I doing this correctly? why or why not. You could also use some of like the features of like screenshotting their work. Students can add like voice notes and do like a number talk. They can consolidate their learning in a plethora of different ways. So if I go across term 2, I would be at 4. And you can kind of see the pattern that goes on. Now, I used to not have anything underneath, but now it gives me a direct like relation to what happened where. And if I need to move these back or students need to move them back, I gave them that option. And I'll talk about like how we create these and do that. But I want to show just a couple examples of what is possible. So there's one example. I have another example where I wanted them to classify different triangles and angular measurements. So the first thing they would do is classify like what type of triangles these are, and they can move them. But for now, I'm going to leave them because I wanted to show you what can happen when this isn't done like correctly. So right now I have all these little individual text boxes and shapes. And if I wanted to move one, I left this one white because this one will work. But if I just wanted to move this, you're going to see what happens. So let's say I wanted to drag this one away. All it's doing is taking the number, and I guess like in theory that could work, but I want them to take the whole text box. So there's a difference that you have to use. So I want to show you this one, which is whited out, because this one I actually use the shape feature, and the shape feature, and when you type it in, actually makes it a lot more accurate so that this is actually a viable option. Okay. So, and I'll explain more what I mean there in terms of like the interactive slides, and I'll kind of show how I make these. So one of the really cool things that I've seen is that not everything needs to be like totally movable. And I've noticed that online, I'm sending students to all these different websites to do different things. And I think parents especially really would like, excuse me, a consistent platform for how to do work. So what I'm in the process of doing, and if you're interested, please reach out to me after, I'm creating virtual manipulatives in math for like every single subject, and I'm doing different things. So like, let's say we're using a 10 frame to represent the statement here. Can I add another shape to represent the equation, like using like the CRA method, like through concrete representation that I want them to achieve? And here I can. So these are really cool features, and I'll show you some other ones just quickly of how this can really work. So how to build, and here's really how you build it. And again, I will have a tutorial video for you for how to do this, but I really want to show you some of the power. So you can really design a slide for students, anything that you want them to complete, but you really have to pull up almost 2 separate PowerPoint presentations. So what you do in the first one is you add anything into your slide, like let's just say it was one of these math ones. So we'll go back here for a second. Add everything that you want in your slide where you don't want students to move them. Because here's what happens with slides when people they kind of make them interactive. You'll send them to parents and they'll move around the whole slide like this, and see how like that kind of happens. I want to lock the background and make it so that's not possible, so that they're not messing up your original hard work. So what you do is you add everything that you want first that doesn't need to move, that you don't want to move at all. And eventually what you will do is you are then going to download that one slide, save it to your computer, and then you're going to upload it in the other slide presentation as a background. And I can show you how to do this pretty quick. So you'll download the slide using File, then Download, and select either a PDF, PNG, or a JPEG. So under Design, Upload, file that as a background image and add text boxes and or shapes for the interactive pieces. So here we have move all of the following locations on the giving map. So here I have an interactive map that I'm creating. So I've got a picture of like, I want to place North America and I move it here. I've got one of South America, and let's just say, I don't know, students want to put in Australia. They're like, okay, I think it goes over here. These are just a couple of different examples of how you can do this, but this is really easy. So let's just try to test one out to make an interactive slide. So here I have a blank presentation, and let's just say I'm just going to do like a kind of a poor job of doing one here and just designing it. So let's just say I wanted to quickly I don't know, I want to insert something. So I'm going to insert a picture. And you'll see, let's just from this device, I'll choose even something, this could be dangerous, randomly off my stuff. So here we go, a background. So here's my background of my map. But notice right now, like when I do it, like this image can still move and it's just kind of on my page, right? So what I would rather do, if I have an image saved, I'm going to go to design. I'm going to go to my background. And now I'm going to select a picture from file. So when I select picture from file, you can pull up anything that you have saved on your computer. And right now I'm on like a Mac, but it could be like my Surface, it could be anything. And I insert it as my background. Now what happens is I can't, like, there's no object orientation and permanence with this. It locks into everything I need here. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to place some shapes onto the map. So this is gonna make it interactive. So when I click on a shape, what you're gonna see is now this can become my interactive pieces. So let's just say I wanted to call this Canada. And I could add something like, I could add a box, like place this where you think it goes. Now the shape that I've added can be moved anywhere where you think Canada is. So I've now created an interactive slide using it this way. So if I want to do that again, I can just go, I can look around, but really you're just toggling between like inserting shapes after you have a background. And yes, this can become more complicated, but this is just an easy way to get you like exposed to it. So you could try a whole bunch of things and make this for anything. It could be literacy, it can be science. Like you could actually fill up like science speakers. You can use this obviously for geography, history, music, Spanish, French, anything that you really need it to do, you can do. Sorry, my son's trying to get in the background here as I'm recording this video. Yeah, Julius? So this is what kind of happens even during e-learning. When you're trying to focus on something, you get like your kid interruptions. And that's, I think that's really a thing to get like interactive so that we can like not have these experiences the same way. Can you just give me a thumbs up? Okay, so as I move on, sorry for the delay there. I wanted to share something else that like I found was most important. We're having a lot of issues in my board about privacy. So I wanted to share, like when you're doing all these interactive slides and presentations, you may want to consider using Creative Commons images. So what that really means is these are free high-def, high-resolution photos that you can pull from for free. They look fantastic. They really add a lot to your slideshows, and you're not in any violation of privacy rights. You've got Pixabay, Pexels, Clip Safari. You've got Creations. Like there's tons. And if you're a primary teacher, really check out Clip Safari. There's some really great stuff there. Now, this is all great that we have all these like fantastic tools and we have these slides, but like how at the end of the day do we assess all of these things? So that's where really some of this like will come down to, and I'm going to blow this back up here just for a second, just so we can, just so you can see it a little better. So when we're talking about assessment, one of the things that I really love to use as kind of my go-to is a single point rubric. So a lot of you I'm sure have seen this, but if you haven't, I'm really just putting like the success criteria of a given task right into the target zone down the middle. And then I have like an above target area, like they're exceeding expectations or they're below expectations. Now, the real thing that I got introduced to this year, and I can't take like the credit for it, my friend Ashley Nethercott, her Twitter handle's here in the bottom corner, introduced me to like the BAR method of self-assessment, which has been really pivotal within our school board. So here what you really do, it's like imagine taking your success criteria and single point rubric and just tilting it down. And now what you've done is you take your success criteria and you should start making it progressively, like it gets progressively harder as it moves from left to right. So on the left-hand side should be easier stuff for students to achieve and then harder as they move down the list. So let's just say here, this is all the success criteria from a lesson relating to systems within science. And let's say the student uses correct materials to build a hydraulic system. What then they would do is they would either like highlight the box above the bar, meaning that they are meeting or exceeding expectations, but it's a way for them to guide their instruction if they're not. And that's when it's really powerful. Like, oh, I actually didn't use the correct materials, so I have to check off or highlight that I'm not doing this correctly. Did the project contain at least 3 transformations? Yes, no. And they go all the way through this. And what we like actually make them do in school a lot is we'll actually have this sometimes posted on a wall in our school, and they physically take like their work up and compare it, and they actually physically move it above or below the bar. And that tactile nature of self-assessment I found has been really important and helps out quite a bit. So this has been extremely beneficial. I always notice, like with some of my work, especially like I'm thinking of student writing and some math works, how do we get them to go from like say a level 2 to like the next level? And this has given them some like insight to that really quickly. And now I don't let them really submit something to me if they have more than 2 things that are below the bar, because that's not deemed acceptable in that regard. And they want to do better. They want to perform better. But now they explicitly know, oh, I can't even hand this in yet. I haven't even put an honest effort in. This has been really transformational for my practice. You might like it. You can print this out, put it in notebooks. You can put it in just a PowerPoint. You can put it in a Word doc. Honestly, it's super easy. And it really just goes about like you talking about like the triangulation of assessment through observations, conversations, and products. So how, guided groups, leveled, choice boards, interviews, self-evaluations, you name it. And I use Ontario because this is in one of our docs in growing success just based on assessment and evaluation. One is just the other tools that I just really have loved since using all of this has been Edpuzzle, just creating my own videos and putting those in and having multiple choice questions sporadically pop up and just keeping them in like a OneNote doc or a slide presentation because it's interactive again. And instead of them just like consuming content, they're really kind of creating along with that. And that's really the purpose that I am trying to achieve. I really do want to thank you for all your time. Now, if you want to reach out to me, you see my name, there's my Twitter handle. You can also email me at d10gred@uwo.ca, and you can visit me at like my free website, hackededu.com. I will make additional tutorial videos to go through some of those more detailed examples quickly. Sorry to go through this quick, but I do have 2 boys at home. So hopefully you got something out of it, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions and support you in any way I can. Thanks so much and have a great day, everyone.